and welcome to another edition of Morning Market Call. I am your host, Sabrina Beck, and I am here with Jimmy Dunn, who's a first-year MBA student in the program here, focusing on marketing. Jimmy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, it's good to be here.
So Jimmy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? What did you do before you came back to business school?
Absolutely. Okay, so I went to BYU for my undergrad, and I was actually an English major, which is a little bit unusual for a background coming through to business school. I worked as an online marketer, kind of stumbled my way into the online marketing world. I started out writing descriptions for products for a small online retailer in Orem, and they ended up pulling me into the marketing department and taught me search engine marketing, pay-per-click marketing, and some online marketing. So I worked there for a couple years, and then was pulled in to be the online marketing manager for another company in Orem, a startup called Doba, and I did B2B lead gen there for people that are trying to start up their own online businesses, their own online stores.
Well, that's pretty cool. So what was the coolest thing that you did as an online marketer?
Okay, so with the English major, the things that I really get excited about are communication and collaboration and those kinds of things. One thing that we were dealing with at Doba was, so we would help people start their own stores online. And when they didn't have a successful experience starting up their own online business, which happens with 95% of startup businesses, they tended to have some kind of sour grapes feelings towards Doba. Mm-hmm. So there was really a lot of conversation that was going on across the web, Twitter feeds, sites that were relevant to wholesaling and drop shipping and those kinds of things that really had a kind of a negative bent towards what Doba was doing. So one thing that I was able to do when I got there was I really pushed to create some spaces to have those conversations where we could be a part of the conversation. So really pushed to form a Twitter feed. We started our Facebook page, we started a company blog, and we started letting people interact with us more directly. And then when people had complaints, we would respond to those complaints, and if they were valid complaints, we'd figure out what we could do for them. And if they were saying things that weren't true, frankly, we'd be able to step in and say, that's not actually how this works. Here's what the model is, and we were able to see some really cool responses from that. People really seemed to appreciate it.
That's really cool. So while you were doing this, did you see a positive turnaround in the attitude that the customers had towards Doba?
We absolutely did. Yeah. So I think the biggest thing in being part of that conversation, we got a couple of really good stories where people would come in and say, ooh, and the same type of flames that we'd see. Oh, I hate Doba. They ripped me off. Their sales guys were so mean. And we'd go back and talk to them and say, hey, what is it that you're having a problem with? And they're like, well, really, I just can't find the kind of product I want to sell. We're like, oh, well, why don't you contact our customer service rep? They'd love to talk you through that. So we had full stories from start to finish where we turned someone around from being really anti-Doba to where by the end they were saying, hey, thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate that. We'd give them maybe a free month of subscription, that kind of thing. And they'd be advocates for us by the end, going out and telling their friends that they had good experiences with us.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So what made you decide to go from having this uber awesome job where you had the opportunity to help customers in this way to coming to BYU and getting an MBA?
Okay, so the thing, I mentioned communication before. That's a big thing for me. Communication, collaboration, leadership. I wanted to be able to do that on a more sophisticated level. And so I knew that I wanted to round out my robust English education and get a little bit more of the business school side of things, learn about finance and about other things about leading a company. And when I got here, I found out about brand management and CPG marketing, which I didn't know existed, and that's like panacea for me. It's like I don't quite know how to describe it, but it's like exactly, it's a perfect hand in glove fit for where I want to go in my career, I feel like. So
that's cool. So how has the reception been where you've had a tech background, something totally different than consumer products? How has the reception been from the recruiters that you've had with going into CPG?
Absolutely. So that's actually been I'm glad you brought that up. So went to National Black and had a really good experience there, and that was actually one of the great things that happened when I would come approach somebody at the booth, right? When I don't have an interview set up or anything like that, and I'd say, hey, I've got this background in English communication and then tech, where I've done a lot with online marketing and things like that, and they kind of light up a little bit and they go, oh, because they're such brilliant classically trained marketers. They're so good at figuring out means-end chains and what the customer really wants, but they feel like they're weak and that like there's room to improve in their online marketing and in reaching out to customers in these kinds of ways, in engaging in those conversations that are back and forth. So the feedback that I've gotten so far is, any CPG company is really looking for that kind of skill set, so they can come in and make progress on a lot of the brands in the company to help them be more tapped into digital marketing.
And there was a group of us that went on a trip to the Midwest and visited several CPG companies. How did you like the trip? Was it, did it give you the view of CPG that you were hoping to get?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the CPG trip was fantastic for that. I think there's nothing that can replace the experience of being on the ground at a company and seeing how people just walking down the hall interact with each other. One of the things that surprised me was going into the different buildings. So we visited General Mills, we visited 3M, we visited Kellogg's, we visited Kraft, a lot of different companies, and even just the feel of the physical buildings that they were in. General Mills building is this new, beautiful building that's got art all over the place and just windows everywhere, so natural light is a big thing and open spaces, whereas some of these other buildings felt a little bit smaller, a little bit more like, small windows and not much natural light. So you could just kind of get a feel for the intangibles, right? Like the it factor for those companies. Like what is it that drives them beyond being able to speak directly with brand managers and directors and other people that can give you a great feel for what the values of the company are and what they're thinking about strategically.
That's cool. Jimmy, it sounds like you are definitely hooked, and I am sure that whichever company snags you when you're done with school is going to feel like that they just found a national treasure. And thank you for coming on to the show today. Really appreciate it. And stay tuned and join us next time for another edition of Morning Market Call.
MMC is brought to you by the Marriott School of Management in association with the Brigham Young University Department of Communications. MMC is made possible by a generous donation from Larry Tasjan and Gary Williams and is produced by Rhett Weller, Todd Castagna, Mason Chin, Joel Toby, and Sabrina Beck, with line producing by Beth and Brian Grimmett. For more information, find us on Twitter or at morningmarketcall.org.